Hi there, Dave Rawlings here of the London Longsword Academy, and I'm here with Mark, one of my scholars and my mate. So we're going to have a look at some small swords by Marco Danelli, and if you know, he kind of dropped off the scene a little bit, hasn't made very many swords, and he started producing little pieces, and we'll see whether it brings him back into the market as a main thing, but he's just got some little pieces that he's working on. So we wanted to look at how some of his small swords have developed from the first one that Mark has ordered onto some of the latter pieces. Okay, so do you want to choose the first one for us?
Yeah, so this is the first guy he brought out about 4.5, 5 months ago. It's a copy of a Mexican small sword. It, we think, is used as a Destrazos small sword. So you've got this extended cullion so you can get in on the bind. It's particularly pretty. It just wasn't as robust as I thought it might be. Now, there's a lot of detailing on it afterwards. There's some beautiful work inside of the cup. The challenge on it is it's extremely light in the blade, and he was using a kind of an epee-based blade in order to make it feel as if it were a small sword. It's not quite there, but it's beautiful work, but I'm a little reticent to fence with it.
Okay. So the features you really got on this, you've got the quite large quillons inside, so even though the quillons on the outside have got a good trapping ability, there's also, if you want to finger the rings, you can. This sits very nicely in the hand. This kind of feels like the grip is actually quite far back on the handle. You see the swell is towards the rear of it, so that actually sits very, very nicely. But as Mark says, there's a lot of lightness in this blade, and this blade feels particularly it's nimble. It's still quite rigid. Is this a Leon Paul, or is this a
no,
Chinese?
it's not
just
Chinese,
a Chinese one. Okay.
Chinese one.
So it's okay. It's quite stiff. It's quite whippy, but again, the fittings on this are worthwhile. I'd like to see a production of this because it is an interesting tool to train with, and I want to see how the quillons really, really do affect them. They're not something you see a lot of on small swords, so you don't get to play with that aspect of it. So could we have a look at the second?
Yeah. Okay, this was number 2. The leap from here to here in terms of quality is extraordinary. So again, demonstrating the kind of things you can do around pierced bladed work. You went and completely pierced the hilt, so it's entirely hollow, and this starts to get a bit special. There's a much stiffer blade, greater binding capability, beautiful balance. Have a look at that guy.
Is there a particular difference in the blade in this? Because I can't see.
It's how to be truthful, it's about how it's bound. So because of the variance in the handle, you get a much stiffer feel to it. That's whippy, that isn't.
To me, this is more about the weight of this. This feels like it has more weight, so it kind of like it feels more of a united piece, whereas this, because there's a lightness to the hilt section, it kind of feels like the movement is subtly different, whereas this has weight perceivably all the way along. So I changes it.
I fenced with both, albeit very briefly. This guy in the bind is superior to this guy. I don't have the palette of language to be explaining the difference of the two. I'm telling you that this one works.
Yeah.
This one, as I said, I'm going to retire it. It's a beautiful thing. I'm happy to have it. This one I'd be happier fencing with.
Yep. This certainly has the feel of a lot of the small swords that I have, the latest sort of dress, more of the dress sword.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, I can understand that.
It feels like a court sword.
It does feel more rigid. It's almost like the linkage between here and here is more complete.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, and whether the play from that is psychological or real is very hard to tell. And that's not to diminish what you say. It's something that I get with long swords is everybody has a preferred long sword. This one feels better. And it's then whether that is a real thing in the balance.
Right.
Not myself included. This is not to sort of like say that your thing is.
No, I agree. I get it. Yeah, your favourite club, right? That's
yeah, absolutely. This is what a real club feels like.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
the handle, the wood on the handle here is the same wood that he uses on his. He did a sort of special version of the wrapper when he was doing his Danelli armors down in.
Oh, it's plain wood.
It's plain wood.
I thought it was leather at first.
No.
Awesome.
No.
Yeah, I see.
Now, the feel of that in this guy here, can't tell you why. It just feels less substantial. Whereas I have, the T-bow rapier he made. That's a wooden handle. That feels extraordinary. This one, I don't know. I can't put my finger.
This is
cannot
what I mean
put my finger on it.
It feels like the difference between having a hickory stick and a balsa stick.
Gotcha.
In effect, there is a lightness to this that you don't have to this. This has a solidity to it, and I think possibly even the compactness of the grip relative to the hilt may be something, and there's even the swelling coming backwards. So I can definitely perceive a difference in there. But again, I'm not entirely sure how much of that is psychosomatic for myself as well. So third one.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when we talked about Marco getting back to being Marco, holy moly, this guy. This is just, it's beautiful in every possible way. It's heavy. It's heavy in the bone. This feels like the. I have it's supposed to be an English small sword. and some French late 17th, early 18th century heavier small swords. I spoke to Marco about this. He had made some Italian small swords, and they feel like this. It's not trying to be a foil, it's trying to be a sword.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's a small sword. Yes, it does have... granted, it's designed to look the way it looks. It's supposed to feel like this, but my goodness, fence with that.
Yep.
That's got some heft. And that's a cutter.
Yep.
Anybody who tells you that small swords are thrust only, they haven't really played with them.
I think this is one of the things. I'm going to go back to this one just briefly before we come on to this. Is, again, I don't think I actually... Mark commented on a lot, but between this and this is very much... This is a cell piece of equipment. This is just something...
Yeah.
Put that in your cell. A couple of people have a fence. At the end of it, you throw it on the floor, give it a clean, done. This is really, as Mark said, this is kind of going into the court sword territory where it is something that is utterly beautiful.
Yeah.
And we will have a close-up of these. But what you may be not able to see is that you can see through the hilt. The pierce work on this is absolutely lovely, and this is really nice to see Marco coming back into doing this kind of stuff and exceeding what he was doing before. This is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
and then,
I agree.
as Mark says,
That.
this, you can't tell so much on here, but the sort of like the weave work, the kind of faux tapestry feel to this is... There's shading to it. It's very, very nice and very subtle. So we will, as I say, give you some close-ups.
But look at the inside. Look at the Ricassa. He's done like an Escher dippling effect on this. Well, first you'd go, why bother? No one's going to see it.
Yep.
Well, the person who has
you
it...
know.
I know.
My sword is lovely.
Yeah. There are other swords. This is mine. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. You've got... Okay, this was his first step back, I think, into producing stuff again. If he goes from here to here that quickly, I'm telling you, the guy's back.
Yep.
You're worried about Marco knocking off? No way. No way. Look at that work. Holy moly.
And you've got these sort of like this monkey fist knotwork feel to this, which is absolutely beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Going back to the heft of this, there's a couple of points that I'd make about this. Is when you look at it and Mark's holding it and I can't see the point out of the periphery of my vision, excuse me, is it looks very, very much like a rapier. There's a real thickness or a real width to the blade. It's not particularly thick because it doesn't need to be. It's not carrying the full length of a rapier blade, but also it has that more of a... It's a sword. It just happens to be small. And I think this is one of the nice things, the difference between the court swords.
Yeah, we said this early on, but he made one for himself. It's up on the Danelli Armories, the previous incarnation on Facebook, which is a blackened sword with a kind of gold inlay on it. And you look at the thickness of that blade. And we talked to him about it. He said, I didn't know this back then. I didn't know enough stuff. He said, take a look at the blades. Small concept of a small sword. It's just a small sword. There isn't a thing. Right? Museologists would go, well, this thing belongs over here, but that thing belongs over there. So we're falsely categorizing something.
Yeah, I agree.
Does it work as a sword? Yeah. Can you cut with it? Hell yeah. Well, it's a small sword. Well, it can't be because it cuts.
Yeah.
No. It's a small sword.
Yeah.
You absolutely can cut with it. And for that, you need that kind of heft.
Yeah, and this honestly, I have some swords which I regard as suitable for Cavendish, which have this similar length and have this presence. This has presence to cut, and I would be very, very happy doing Cavendish with this.
I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah, and Mark knows I like to slip Cavendish into play occasionally and stuff.
Painfully.
But this is beautiful. It has heft. Mark was saying this is potentially not a blade that you'd want to tip and play with. I would, because I like it. You just have to use more control.
I think you're right. You want to be very careful with that because it has enough heft that when you punt it into something, they're really going to feel it. So you want to be careful.
And that kind of builds us into an argument as well, or a discussion about various different swords of whether you're using long swords and how hard you need to hit with things. With this, you'd need more control. Potentially with a heavier blade, you need to use more control. There's a thing going on there. So that is absolutely beautiful. This is
it's amazing work.
Yeah. Look forward to the close-up to this because it is absolutely stunning. And then we have...
Yeah, we were playing this earlier on. This is the latest. Just a really versatile, happy to both cut and thrust with, beautifully balanced, well-made leather handles, relatively simple in terms of the inlays, not as complicated as anything else, but one you'd be happy to use in a glove. And you cut with this a few times earlier on today, just naturally rolled with it, because it is a cutter. And it's a different blade. That's, again, importantly, you swap manufacturer.
Now, this is a very interesting thing. So here you have these first two here that we were talking about. I would personally say a lot of the issues with this and about how they feel, and for both of these, to be honest, is in the qualities of the blades that are being used. I don't think Marco necessarily, I think this is an ongoing point of research. I've actually spoken to Marco about these, and I know he's going to be replacing the blades on these swords, so it's something he's aware of, and I know it's something he was not happy with himself. So here you have a lack of presence to these, which is almost entirely, I think, really down to the blade itself. Whereas when you get to this, Marco's own piece, it has a real presence because he's made a blade for the sword that he wants to have on it, and that shows, and it's beautiful, and the heft is wonderful. And it has so much more presence. It really has a good bit of movement to it. And then you have here, and Marco's again, this is a production one he's brought in, so I guess another Chinese one. This is massively different to these production blades. It has more weight to it. It has more of a sort of a gradual but more constant and wider, fuller to it the whole way down on one side.
We were playing with this earlier on, and the difference you could feel it was when you're coming into a bind, when you're coming into a suppression, because it's there, because it has presence. You don't have this foily bend or epeish bend. None of the court swords that I've played with have as much give. It would be unreasonable to have that much give and yet expect to be able to put on a bind. Yeah. Because you do that, you can change the techniques, or at least you can get a greater feeling of the presence of the technique. We were talking earlier about being able to put a suppression on and counter into a grab using the offhand. It's kind of difficult when the sword is bent at almost a right angle.
Certainly what I found more, the thing I found more noticeable about for me using this was that when you're making binds of rotation, so where you're dealing with disengages by re-rotating back into the same position as you started on, this having the extra presence in the blade really did make a difference. You want to follow the momentum of the sword, and that is a really, really helpful thing, particularly if you're using things like Destrezza. No, to be honest, I'd say, particularly if you want to do fencing, it's a really, really nice thing. This leads you to be very sort of like flicky. This makes you aware of the heft of the weapon, and you'll need to follow its want.
It affects it affected the tempo of the action, because with this guy, if it was bending off, you had a temptation to flip back. This you didn't, because once you were on, you could stay on. Yeah, you're kind of like an angry windscreen wiper with one, and on the other one, the blade just goes, it re-engages, or it beats and it comes back. So yeah, it's very, very, very noticeable difference. I would say, despite the fact that Mark says in comparison to this it is simple, it is a degree of simplicity, because this is still absolutely beautiful work. And this is one of the things to be aware of when you're getting something from Marco, is that the care that he puts into each individual product is a lot higher than a lot of people. So this has the feeling of being individually made. There is amazing. Yeah. And it's absolutely beautiful. I wish you could feel how if you get a small sword, like for example the Nyman ones, where you've got this, it's been inserted into here and it's kind of a hole and it's kind of casting and this rattles. This has a beautiful solidity to it, which I think really has to be felt. The ergonomics in Nyman's defense, it's a different economics.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So
it's more that sort of like cast feel.
No, but it is cast. That's the difference. One is a mass-produced cast exercise. The other is something that takes 2 weeks to produce. And you put a master craftsman on it. They're not going to be the same.
Absolutely. I think though, the reason I mention it is more because you can't perceive the difference if you're familiar with holding one. Yes, obviously there's the difference between what's going into it. But if you look at that and you see it on the screen, you can't really get the comprehension of how different and pleasing this feels in hand. And this is true certainly of this one as well. This as well, grip-wise, beautiful. This is a strange beast, and I would love to fence with this more. I'd love to see this as a production rapier. I think it's absolutely, absolutely wonderful. I'd love to see what it feels like with a different blade. But this, with the new blade that he's chosen, and the feel of this is beautiful. I wish you could feel the ergonomics where it's coming out from the quillen block here, and it's the corner of the quillen block that leads into the turning of the groove in the handle. Yeah,
it's extraordinary, isn't it?
And it's the same on this, and it's the same on this. Every single one matches up perfectly, and that is beautiful.
When you see really good architecture, and they talk about everything in the house having been considered down to the handle in the drawer. So when somebody pays that much attention to something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make a difference to that sword. But because everything's been considered, the totality of the sword is, it feels good, it has presence, it's in the bind, you can thrust with it, you're completely confident with the thing. This is a really well-made sword. Yeah. This is a really, really good job. And the concern when, I don't say he hung up the keys to the forge was, how long would it take him to get back to doing something? We're here.
I think also, I would say, in all honesty, is that the pieces from Marco that I had the pleasure to review beforehand. Since making his very, very limited comeback, I know he's not in production fully of things yet, but since making his comeback and his concentration more on making individual pieces, he is already exceeding what he did before. This is something which he used to get himself back into it, I think. And it's very, very interesting because he's using something that is incredibly simple and he's not trying to embellish it. And that's absolutely great, and it's functional, and I want to see this produced so that more of us can fence with these things. These other pieces, I think, personally, from my point of view, Marco has already started transcending where he was, and he was already exceptionally, exceptionally talented. This is a different level. Do you feel?
Completely.
Yep. Thank you so much for talking through.
Oh,
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Marco, I'd be looking for a discount from now on, brother.
Yeah, likewise. And I like free swords, as it happens. I really like free swords.
You're going to have a play with that one on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to very much so. Like I say, the only criticism I have of any of these is these lighter blades, and I know that Marco has sorted these already.
Yeah.
It's something you can tell by the fact that he's changed it before he started selling. He was aware of this problem with the blades. He sorted it.
Yeah.
But Marco, you've done yourself really, really good work.
Yeah.
Take care.